how we're going to cut or what we're going to do to find the money. The good news, I'll talk a little bit about this in a minute too, the Finance Council, is that we budgeted conservatively at UNT, and while some of us over the years have thought that's been a challenge and actually probably something that we wish that we could overcome and be a little more dynamic, maybe a little more of a risk taker, it's served us well over the last couple of years in what we're dealing with budgetarily. There are several colleagues across the state that are cutting student service fee budgets because their institution has asked them to contribute to the greater good. Now, you may know that student service fees cannot go to instruction directly. They can only support outside the classroom type of activities. But there are other things that are outside the classroom that can be supported besides the ones that we support now. And so other institutions are being asked to tighten their belts all across campus. We have not been asked to do that at all, which I think is very nice, truly very nice of them not to ask us. But the discussion has been that those students pay those fees for the services that have been allocated and that the students have allocated those funds, and that's where they feel like they should go. And I think that's a testament to the dedication of upper administration to what happens with our students and the importance of the decisions that they make. I'm hoping that that will continue forward, although we will be as supportive as we can during this budget time frame and what we can do to help. I think most of you know that student service fee packets have been distributed. The funding priorities were listed in there, and if folks have questions about those, we'll be happy to talk. But know that those funding priorities came directly from the strategic plan. Worked with Jason Simon directly. He and I independently came up with what we thought were the funding priorities. Wanted to make sure that I had somebody's input, and then we put it out to the direct reports to make sure that they were okay with that. And so I think there's 7 or 8 funding priorities that are listed within student service fee packets, and those will be the priorities that the Student Service Fee Committee will rely upon as they make decisions. So we're moving forward in that. Those packets are due December 21st. So budget's not great, but for us so far, we really are moving forward, and I think that's a good thing. I want to provide a little bit of information about the 4 councils that the President appointed, and I think that hopefully all of you have heard about the councils, and I'll talk a little bit about each one of them and give you an update of where they are. Student Affairs is represented on all 4 of the councils. They're all interrelated, because we can't talk about enrollment without talking about how that impacts finances, and we can't talk about our finances and what we do to provide funds and support for different initiatives across campus without talking about how that impacts our public image and how we can raise money, or how many buildings we can build with our capital planning council. So they're all interrelated in many ways. The premise for them, and what the President has said openly several times, is that for those who have the most impact or who are affected the most should have the most say. We had a leadership retreat yesterday, and a couple of folks from our area were able to participate. Tom and Mona were all there. And so we're able to get some of those updates. But he talked once again about how he felt it was important that folks who are impacted by decisions were given the authority to make the decisions. So these councils are not making recommendations to the President. They're making the decisions. And I think that's an important thing for you all to note. He has given his charge to each one of the councils. He actually co-chairs one of the councils, the Finance Council, which is Bush. But he is not in each one of those council meetings, and he is not making the decisions for those folks. And it truly is the opportunity for the university to come together and make decisions that impact the future, and I think it's a great model. Another reason why the fact that Lane will be here for a couple of years allows these councils to be implemented and for us to be able to see the fruits of how they can work. We'll talk first about the Enrollment Council. It's probably the one I know the most about. Fortunate enough that I chair that council with Lauren Bergeron. Another impact, I think, or testament to how important the President sees student affairs and the impact of what we can do for enrollment. Right now, we're looking at defining what our target number of students should be over the course of the next 5 years, and then what the makeup will be within that number. What we put out to the committee, to the council, is that we will be 45,000, take a deep breath, by 2016. We think we will. We're trying to stay away from percentage increases every year, because if we didn't say, that's about a 4% average increase over the course of the next 5 years. So this is not out of whack with what we're doing right now. We're not talking about recruiting more. Obviously we want to retain more, but it's not an initiative, it's not a complete effort to go out and get as many students as we possibly can into the university. Truly, 45,000 is about what would happen if we continue doing what we're doing. And so we threw that out there as where we feel like we will be. For those of you that keep up with the coordinating board and what their estimates are, it's far ahead of what the coordinating board thought we would be by 2016, but it's just based upon our growth. There are subcommittees that we've created within the council, one on freshmen, one on transfer, and one on graduate, because we really want to be strategic, though, about those numbers. What we haven't done over the years truly is reach out to different groups to decide where we want to pull students. Transfers have been really the backbone of our students and the numbers that we have. We certainly don't want to ignore that population. In fact, they are a tremendous addition to our population, as you guys all know. They bring so much. Come on, if you could stop dropping things off. They bring so much to what we do on campus every day. And so we want that number to continue. So funny. We do want that number to continue, but that subcommittee is going to look at what does our transfer makeup need to be. So when we talk about 45,000, we're at 36,000 now. So that's 9,000, right, that we need to make up. So of that 9,000, where should the breakdown be between those three populations? We've thrown out numbers of 3,500 for both transfer and freshmen, that's additional, and 2,000 for graduate, because we really need to grow the graduate students. And so we'll let those subcommittees work and come back and argue and see what they think about that. When I look at a freshman class and the piece that I've argued, it doesn't mean that we had 3,500 freshmen and we're saying that we're going to have 3,500 freshmen and we'll have 7,000 freshmen by the time 2016. That's not how the numbers play. Ideally, we're looking at a freshman class of about 4,100, which is probably manageable given what we have from a facilities perspective in housing. Now, it's not manageable for the union as it is now. It's not manageable for many of us that are sitting around thinking that we don't have enough people. I'll talk a little bit more about that when we get into the Finance Council, but know that there's a model that's been created. Clark and Research has created a model where we can plug in a number and it will tell us how it impacts us from square footage, how many facilities we need, how many more advisors we need, how many more student affairs staff we need, all of those pieces, how many more scholarships we need, so that we know what the impact of this growth will be. We're not just getting numbers in to say that we've got more money to work with every year, when sometimes I think that people have felt that's been the case, but that we'll be strategic about it. We'll utilize that model to determine the impact and to determine where we should be with freshmen, where we should be with transfers, and where we should be with graduate students, because they all impact our budget differently. We get more money from the state for upperclassmen types of courses, which would be our transfer students are going to bring more of those numbers in. We also get a lot more money for graduate level classes, specifically master's classes. And so obviously we want to be strategic in how we bring those folks in. Retention is important, a very important key, and I would argue one of the greatest ways that we can impact those numbers. So what we're doing every day impacts that retention number and will come into play as we talk about how these numbers shake out. And looking at the Finance Council, I told you that Jean Bush, who is our acting CFO, and she's our Senior Associate Vice President for Finance, and Dr. Rollins chair that council. Most of our time in that council has been discussing where we put our money. The hope is that with our growth, remember we were about a 4% growth this year, there were some funds that we were hoping to be able to expend this year. It's likely that we won't be able to expend those one-time funds. They may be part of what we send back to the state, but that's part of the discussion. One of the important pieces of the discussion in the last couple of council meetings has been that as we grow, that we need to be thinking more about staff and what we're doing with them, and faculty. Don't want to say that they're not important. Faculty are definitely important, but I'm talking to staff now. I want you to know how important you all are. And the president has made the comment that when we look at this growth and when we look at the increased funds that come with the growth, we need to identify percentages of that go to academic affairs to deal with staff, and that go to student affairs to deal with staff. It was a great feeling to hear him say that, and I truly believe that he will do that. I'm not sure what the impact will be, what our numbers will be, how many more staff will be able to provide, but to know that it's important to him that we're able to grow our staff to support our numbers of students, I think should be important for all of you as well. So that's the good news moving forward with the Finance Council. And talking about the Capital Planning Council, there is what we call Capital Planning Projects Council, which is a system-wide council that's existed for years. It prioritizes all the buildings, all the renovations that we do across our campus, and they've done it system-wide. What the Capital Planning Council will do is to focus solely on the University of North Texas, our Denton campus, to determine what our future projects will be. What's important to note is that we've got to be able to prioritize, get everybody on the same page, because as we move forward with buildings, everybody can't build what they want. And let me give you, I'll use the union as an example. Even though auxiliary funds, students would pay for a new union or a renovated union, the university has to have the bonding capacity to be able to make that happen. So we can't say because auxiliary funds would build a union that we can build as big a union as we possibly want, or as the students will vote to do, and then we can still build a research building, and then we can still finish the stadium, and oh, by the way, we need a new CBAG building. If there's funds available, can we make that happen? Not necessarily, because we have to have the bonding capacity to make it happen. So in order to do that, there has to be a priority with all of them. And what this Capital Planning Council will do is allow that to happen. It will allow all areas across campus to talk about what their priorities are and bring them forward to this Capital Planning Council, who will then utilize all that information to prioritize what our next building projects are. So thus far, the union is still is something that we would be proposing. Obviously, it's one of our top priorities, and we'll continue to move forward in that vein. But we will obviously be working with everyone here in the division as far as feedback on what we do need as far as facilities are concerned. So expect that part to continue. The final is the Public Relations and Image Council. This one is focusing on how we obviously appear to the outside world, what the university looks like, who we are. One of the things we feel like we do, at least we talk about this collectively from a leadership perspective, is that we sell ourselves short. It was interesting yesterday, Rick Villarreal got up and talked about UNT beating Texas Tech in basketball Tuesday night. Yay, we beat Texas Tech, perfect. Very true. It is terrific.
No guns up there.
No guns up. But in the paper, we talked about that we were worried that we weren't going to win, and what a great thing it